The rain hammered the tin roof of the old farmhouse like God's own judgment, each drop a thunderous accusation that drowned out David's sobs. He clutched the faded Polaroid of his parents, smiling, oblivious in one hand, while the other trembled over the eviction notice from his own kin, scrawled in his father's blocky handwriting, "You're no son of mine. Get out before dawn." James slammed the truck door shut outside, his boots splashing through the mud, heart pounding not from the storm but from the voicemail that had yanked him from a dead sleep. "David's in trouble. Real bad. Come quick." In the dim flicker of a single bulb swinging like a noose in the kitchen, David looked up, eyes red-rimmed and wild, the kind of broken that no duct tape could fix. James, all broad shoulders and calloused hands from years hauling lumber in the Oregon backwoods, froze in the doorway, water streaming from his flannel shirt. "Dave," he whispered, voice cracking like splintered pine. What the hell happened? It was the question that hung between them like smoke after a fire, unanswerable, yet burning everything it touched. David had always known he was different, even back in their dusty high school days in rural Idaho, where football Fridays were religion and anything softer than a stiff upper lip got you labeled a pansy. He and James had been thick as thieves since kindergarten. David the quiet artist sketching eagles in the margins of his notebooks, James the golden boy quarterback who punched the first bully who called David a fag. They'd shared secrets under the bleachers, stolen glances that lingered too long, a brush of knuckles that sent sparks up spines, but never crossed that line. Not until college, when David fled to Seattle for art school and James followed, chasing a construction gig that felt like an excuse to breathe the same air. That night in the farmhouse, his grandparents' place, the last scrap of family he had left, David spilled it all. His parents had found the letters. Not just any letters, the ones from James, tucked in a shoebox under his bed. Words like "I can't stop thinking about your laugh and wish I could hold you for real." They'd burst into his childhood room during a surprise visit, faces twisting from shock to fury, his mother wailing about eternal damnation while his father bellowed scripture like bullets. Freak. Abomination. They'd burned the letters in the backyard fire pit, the flames licking up confessions like kindling, and then they did the unthinkable, disowned him on the spot. No please, no therapy pamphlets, just a duffel bag of his clothes thrown at his feet and the keys to the family truck yanked away. "Go live your sins somewhere else," his father spat, and David had driven straight here, to the edge of nowhere, where the pines whispered judgments of their own. James listened, fists clenched white-knuckled on the scarred oak table, the storm outside mirroring the one brewing in his chest. He'd loved David since they were kids, fiercely, foolishly, in the shadowed corners of his straight-laced life. But James had his own ghosts, a fiancée back in Boise, Emily, sweet as pie but as vanilla as they came, who'd pinned him down with promises of picket fences and 2.5 kids. He'd proposed on one knee last Christmas, the ring a family heirloom, because that's what men did in their world. Broke off the engagement 2 months ago in a tear-soaked diner booth, mumbling excuses about cold feet, but really because every time he closed his eyes, it was David's face he saw. "You're braver than me," he'd told David over late-night calls, but now, staring at his best friend unraveling, James wondered if bravery was just another word for heartbreak. "They're wrong," James said finally, sliding into the chair across from him, reaching out to cover David's hand with his own. The touch was electric, forbidden fruit they'd danced around for years. David's fingers curled instinctively, gripping like a lifeline. "You're not a sin. You're everything." The words hung heavy, laced with the unsaid "I love you" that neither dared voice yet. Outside, lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the eviction notice like a death warrant. David laughed bitterly, a sound like shattered glass. Everything? To who? Jay? To a town that'd stone us? To parents who think I'm possessed? He pulled his hand away, standing abruptly, pacing the creaky floorboards. I lost it all tonight. Job at the mill's gone too. They'll hear by morning. What now? Crawl back to Seattle. Sketch portraits of hipsters who don't give a damn. James rose too, closing the distance in 2 strides, his 6 feet 2 inches frame dwarfing David's slighter build. We fight, he growled, the quarterback fire flaring in his hazel eyes. Or we run. Together. It was the first time he'd said it aloud. Together, and it landed like a grenade, blowing open the floodgates. David whirled, tears carving tracks through the grime on his cheeks. Run where? You're straight passing enough to fake it. But me? I'm the rainbow flag in a Confederate parade. James cupped his face then, thumbs brushing away the salt, their breaths mingling hot and ragged. I'm not faking anymore. Not with you. And just like that, in the eye of the storm, James kissed him. Slow at first, tentative, like testing thin ice, then deepening with the pent-up fury of a decade denied. The world narrowed to that kiss. David's hands fisting James's wet shirt, pulling him closer. James's arms wrapping around him like iron bands, as if he could shield David from the rage of small-town America. They broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed together, the rain a distant roar. I love you, James murmured, the confession a vow etched in thunder. David nodded, a sob escaping. I know. God, I know. They didn't make love that night, not with the ghosts hovering, but they held each other on the sagging couch until dawn, whispering dreams of escape, a life in the city, where love didn't come with asterisks. By morning, the skies cleared to a mocking blue, and they packed what they could into James's battered Ford. David's sketchbooks, James's tool belt, a thermos of black coffee strong enough to strip paint. The farmhouse receded in the rear view, a relic of what was, as they pointed west toward Portland, then south to San Francisco, the promised land of rainbow flags and open hearts. But America wasn't a straight shot. It was riddled with potholes. Their first night on the road, in a no-tell-motel off I-5, James's phone buzzed incessantly. Emily, his ex, blowing up his inbox with pleas and accusations. Is it him, that fairy from high school? David saw the texts over his shoulder, jealousy twisting like a knife. She knows, James sighed, deleting the thread. Guessed. Doesn't matter now, but it did. Seeds of doubt, planted in Idaho soil, had hitchhiked with them. In Portland, they crashed on a cousin's couch, James's, the one liberal branch of his family tree, and scraped by on gig work. David bartending at a dive with ironic mustaches, James framing houses for tech bros who tipped in crypto. Nights were theirs, stolen walks along the Willamette, hands brushing under street lamps, kisses in alley shadows that tasted like freedom. David sketched James by candlelight, capturing the curve of his jaw, the scar above his eyebrow from a childhood brawl. You're my muse, he'd tease, but his eyes held a depth that scared James, vulnerability wrapped in steel. James, for his part, learned to navigate the gay bars, awkward at first in his Timberlands among glitter and grind, but blooming under David's patient guidance. This is us, David said one night, clinking beer bottles at a drag show. No hiding, yet hiding came calling. A month in, David's parents tracked him down. Through a mutual friend, the betrayal stinging worse than the disownment. They showed up unannounced at the cousin's door, his mother pale and prayer bead clutching, father red-faced and rumbling. "This ends now," the old man barked, shoving a bus ticket to Boise into David's chest. "Come home, repent, or you're dead to us forever." James stepped forward, chin jutted, but David waved him back, voice steady as rebar. "I'm home, Dad. Right here." The slam of the door echoed like finality. But as they drove away, his mother's whisper lingered. "You'll burn for this." David didn't cry then. He waited until they were alone, crumbling into James's lap like a man who'd lost his country. That fracture widened cracks in their foundation. James started pulling overtime, haunted by whispers from his crew. "Heard your boy's a queer." That true? And the what-ifs gnawed at him. What if Emily was right? What if this life was a phase? A rebellion against the straight and narrow he'd been bred for? One drunken night, after a bar brawl where James threw punches for a slur hurled at David, he confessed over takeout lo mein, "I miss my family. Not like yours, they're gone, but mine. They think I'm lost." David froze, chopsticks midway to his mouth. "And are you? Lost with me?" James's silence was the betrayal's first bloom, a thorn in their garden of good intentions. They pushed south anyway, chasing the California sun like migrants after water, the Ford groaning under the weight of unspoken fears. San Francisco welcomed them with fog-shrouded hills and Castro Street's electric pulse, rainbow crosswalks, murals of intertwined lovers, the hum of acceptance that felt like absolution. David landed a gig at a queer bookstore, shelving titles like Giovanni's Room and Call Me by Your Name, his sketches evolving into bold posters sold on Etsy. Two silhouettes against a stormy sky, hands clasped defiant. James joined a union crew retrofitting Victorians, his rough edges softening in the city's kaleidoscope. Pride parades where he marched arm in arm with David, leather harnesses and face paint turning his stoic face into a grin. For a while, it was paradise reclaimed. Mornings tangled in thrift store sheets, David's head on James's chest, tracing the tattoos of elk and evergreens that mapped his lover's wild heart. "You're my anchor," David murmured one dawn, lips brushing the salt of James's skin. James chuckled, deep and rumbling, pulling him closer. "Nah, you're the sail. I'm just along for the ride." They cooked breakfasts of eggs scrambled with chorizo, blasting Springsteen Thunder Road on repeat, because even in their new world, Bruce's anthems of escape hit home. Afternoons, David dragged James to gallery openings, where wine-sipping aesthetes cooed over his work, and James, beer in hand, confessed in the corner, "Feels like I'm in a movie." Our movie. But movies have villains, and they're slunk in wearing a familiar face. Emily. She'd followed James west, not out of love but spite, landing a marketing job in Oakland and accidentally bumping into him at a hardware store. "Jay," she said, all honeyed hurt, flipping her blonde waves like a weapon. "We need to talk." He should have run, but guilt tethered him. Years of Sunday suppers, her hand in his at church picnics. They met for coffee in a neutral cafe, James swearing to David it'd be closure. 1 hour. Then block her number. David nodded, but his eyes, those painter's eyes that saw too much, held a shadow. "Be careful. Ghosts bite." The coffee turned toxic fast. Emily slid across the table a folder, printouts of James's old texts to her, interspersed with screenshots from mutual friends back home. David's corrupting him. One read, from James's own sister. You're not gay, Jay. You're confused. Good men don't throw away their lives for this. She gestured vaguely, as if their love were a stain. James's jaw tightened, but she pressed. Tales of his family's despair, his mother's Valium prescriptions, the church prayer chain circling his deliverance. Come back, she pleaded, tears artful. We can fix this. Therapy, whatever. But him? He's poison. It was the hook that snagged poison, echoing the venom his father had spat at David. James drove home in a daze, the folder burning a hole in the glove box. That night, as David chattered about a gallery show, James's silence festered. In bed, when David's hand wandered south, seeking the familiar heat, James flinched. Not tonight, he muttered, rolling away. David propped on an elbow, voice small. Emily? James's non-answer was damning. The fight erupted like a fault line, accusations flying. You're ashamed. From David. I'm trying. Damn it. From James, until David stormed out, crashing at a friend's loft in the Mission. 3 days of radio silence stretched like taffy, each hour a fresh hell. James drowned in work, hammering nails until his hands bled. Emily's words looping, good men don't. He hit a dive bar in the Tenderloin, nursing whiskey with strangers, when his phone lit up, not David, but his sister, calling from Boise. Mom's sick, Jay. Real sick. Heart stuff. She wants you home. Clean, clean. The word curdled his gut. He booked a red-eye that night, leaving a voicemail for David. Family emergency. Back soon. Love you. But love felt flimsy against blood ties, and as the plane lifted off, James wondered if he'd just traded one abandonment for another. David, meanwhile, wandered the fog-draped streets like a ghost, sketching feverishly in notebooks that bled charcoal tears. The bookstore crowd rallied, queer elders sharing stories of Stonewall scars, young activists thrusting flyers for PFLAG meetings, but the void James left was a black hole. He texted Emily once, anonymous from a burner app, stay away. He's mine. Petty, but it soothed the burn. On the third night, alone in the loft with a bottle of Cabernet, David confronted the mirror. Hollow cheeks, eyes like bruised plums. You're enough, he whispered, but the lie tasted like ash. His parents' voices echoed, abomination, mingled now with James's doubts. What if love was just a pretty lie small-town boys told themselves? James landed in Boise under a sky like hammered tin, the airport's fluorescent buzz a rude awakening. His family enveloped him, hugged stiff with subtext, his mother's frail form in a hospital gown, murmuring thank God as if his return were resurrection. The prodigal son, straight-washed and repentant, or so they hoped. Dinners were minefields. Grace prayers laced with let us not into temptation, sidelong glances at his empty ring finger. Emily hovered, a specter in sundresses, cooking casseroles that stuck in his throat. See, she whispered one evening, as his sister droned about wedding plans for her, not them. This is home. Real love. But home felt like a cage, bars forged from nostalgia and fear. James snuck calls to David from the hospital parking lot, each one a lifeline fraying. Mom's stable, he'd report, voice low. Miss you like hell. David's responses cooled. Glad she's okay. Take care. The distance-bred paranoia. Had David moved on? Hooked up with some lithe artist at the gallery? The thought clawed at James, possessive and ugly, until one night, after too many beers at a family barbecue, he snapped. "I'm gay, all right? Me and David were endgame." The backyard fell silent, burgers charring on the grill, his father's face purpling like storm clouds. The explosion was biblical, shouts of delusion. His sister sobbing, "You've ruined us." Emily fleeing in her Corolla with a final, "I tried to save you." His mother, from her sickbed later, clutched his hand with skeletal fingers. "Choose, James. Us or that." It was the mirror of David's disownment, and in that sterile room, smelling of antiseptic and regret, James saw the cycle clear. He walked out at dawn, hitchhiking to the airport with nothing but his wallet and a resolve forged in fire. On the flight back, he texted David, "I'm coming home. To you. No more half measures." David was at SFO when James deplaned, poster tube in hand, his latest sketch, their silhouettes now crowned with halos of light. They collided in arrivals, a tangle of limbs and apologies, James's duffel hitting the floor as he kissed David fierce and public, earning wolf whistles from baggage claim. "I chose," James gasped against his lips. Every time, back in their mission flat, they made love like reclamation. Slow, reverent, mapping scars both seen and unseen. David's fingers traced the fresh bruises on James's knuckles, from punching a wall, not a face, and whispered, "We're unbreakable now." But America had more lessons, and their story was far from scripted. Word spread in ripples. James's family cut him off cold. No Christmas cards or birthday checks, just a single letter from his mother, praying for your soul, returned unopened. David's parents doubled down, mailing conversion therapy pamphlets that he burned in the sink, the smoke curling like middle fingers. Yet, in the Castro's embrace, they built a tribe. Sunday brunches at home with drag queens dishing dirt, volunteer shifts at the LGBTQ center where David taught art to runaways, James coaching basketball for trans kids who called him Coach J. Love deepened in the mundane. James learning to fold David's scarves just so. David memorizing James's coffee order, black, 2 sugars, splash of oat milk. But betrayal's shadow lingered. At David's first solo gallery show, a series titled Exiles, raw portraits of queer outcasts, Emily crashed the party. She dyed her hair jet black, traded sundresses for leather, claiming reinvention. "I get it now," she purred to James in the coat room, breath whiskey sweet. The thrill. But he's holding you back. Too wounded, too needy. Her hand on his arm was a spark to dry tinder, stirring old guilts. James shrugged her off, but the seed took root. Is David too broken? Am I his crutch? The doubt festered quietly, a termite in their timber frame, gnawing at nights when David woke screaming from nightmares of fire pits and disownments. James held him then, murmuring "I'm here" into sweat-damp hair, but his own sleep grew fitful, haunted by Emily's parting shot and the echo of his mother's plea. He threw himself into work, taking side gigs restoring queer landmarks, the Compton's cafeteria riot plaque, the storefront where Harvey Milk once dreamed, hoping sweat would exorcise the unrest. David noticed. Of course, his artist's eye missed nothing. "You're drifting," he said one evening over vegan pho. Chopsticks paused mid-slurp. James forced a grin. "Just tired, babe. City's got me wired." San Francisco's pulse quickened their rhythm, but it also amplified the cracks. Pride season hit like a fever dream. Floats blaring Lady Gaga, leathermen in chaps high-fiving twinks in kilts, the air thick with glitter and possibility. David and James marched front and center. David's sign reading "Love is the revolution" in bold strokes. James's arm slung possessive around his waist. The crowd roared, a sea of flags waving like absolution, and for a heartbeat, they believed in triumph, in the arc of history bending toward them. But on the float behind, a float sponsored by a slick equality NGO, Emily waved from the VIP section, her smile a serpent's coil. She'd come out as bi in a viral TikTok, positioning herself as ally-in-chief, and the media lapped it up, from Heartland Heartbreak to Rainbow Warrior. The piece landed in the Chronicle, a glossy spread with Emily's tearful quote, "Losing James taught me love's fluidity. Shout out to David, y'all story inspired me." David read it aloud over breakfast, voice dripping sarcasm. Inspired? Huh? Like how Picasso inspired those forgeries. James laughed it off, but the article burrowed deep, stirring the pot of his insecurities. That night, at a fundraiser for the center, Emily cornered him by the open bar, her new girlfriend, a willowy poet, hanging back like a prop. "We could collaborate," she cooed, pressing a business card into his palm. Emily Hart, activist extraordinaire. A podcast on queer reclamation. Your voice, blue-collar authenticity, could change lives. James pocketed it, pulse hammering, because damn if it didn't sound noble. Change lives. Wasn't that what he'd always wanted? David saw the card later, tucked in James's wallet like contraband. The fight was surgical, no yelling, just David's quiet fury, words honed sharp as scalpels. "She's poison, Jay. You know it." James defended, voice rising despite himself. "It's not about her, it's exposure. For us, for the kids we coach." But David's eyes welled, betrayal etching lines around his mouth. "Us? Or your redemption arc? Tired of being the villain in your straight boy fable?" He grabbed his coat, slamming the door on "I need air." James chased him into the fog-choked street, but David vanished into the BART, heading to Oakland for a friend's couch. The separation stretched to a week, each day a fresh incision. James ghosted Emily's texts, podcast pitch ready, and threw himself into therapy, a group for queer men unpacking toxic masculinity. There, under fluorescent lights in a church basement repurposed for healing, he unpacked the layers, the quarterback facade, the fear of softness, the terror that loving David made him less man. "I abandoned him once," he confessed to the circle, voice gravel rough. "Not outright, but I let doubt win." The facilitator, a silver-haired ex-Marine named Rico, nodded. "Doubt's the real betrayer, son. Kills more loves than any bigot." James left with homework. Write a letter to his younger self, the boy who'd punched bullies for David but never admitted why. David, adrift in Oakland's grit, found solace in street art collectives, tagging murals of intertwined fists under the moon, catharsis in spray paint's hiss. His phone stayed dark, pride warring with ache, until a call from the gallery. A collector wanted exiles for a MoMA exhibit. Elation surged, but it soured quick. "We need both artists' bios." "Who's James in this?" David hung up, staring at the blank wall. Their story, their pain, reduced to copy. He drafted a text to James. "Congrats on the exposure. Solo show's killing it. Delete." Instead, he showed up at the center unannounced, catching James mid-drill with the trans team, his laugh booming as a kid sank a three-pointer. They locked eyes across the gym, the world narrowing to that charged space. James crossed it in seconds, pulling David into a hug that smelled of Gatorade and home. "Don't you dare apologize," David mumbled into his shoulder. "Just stay." They talked on the bleachers after, raw and unfiltered. James reading his letter aloud. Voice breaking on you were always enough, fists and all. David admitting the nightmares where James walked away for real. "I can't lose you to her ghost," he said. James cupped his face, thumbs tracing jawline. "No ghosts. Just us, building something real." They kissed there, chaste but fierce, the kids whooping from the sidelines. "Get a room, coach." Reconciliation ignited a fire. They eloped in a whim to City Hall, rings from a pawn shop etched with together, witnesses a pair of jubilant tourists. No fanfare, just vows whispered in a marble hallway. In fog and fire, "I choose you." But America doesn't let joy stand unchallenged. Word leaked, thanks to Emily's accidental Instagram story, geotagged from the same block, and backlash crashed like a wave. James's crew lead texted, "Heard you're hitched." HR's asking questions. "Watch your back." Trolls swarmed David's Etsy. One-star reviews laced with slurs, fag propaganda. And then, the gut punch. David's estranged uncle, the one progressive relative, emailed an olive branch, "Proud of you, nephew. Let's meet. Bring the husband." The dinner was set in a Sausalito bistro, sunset gilding the bay like fool's gold. Uncle Harlan was Silver Fox charming, a venture capitalist with a rainbow pin on his lapel, toasting their union with Napa cab. "Family's family," he said, clinking glasses. "Blood's thicker than bias," David thawed, sharing sketches, while James relaxed into stories of Harlan's own closet days in the 80s. But as dessert arrived, tiramisu dusted with cocoa, Harlan slid a check across the table. 5 figures, zeros gleaming. "For your future. Art school for you, David. Business certs for James. No strings, except the string was barbed. Keep it quiet. My board's old school. Scandals sink deals." James's hand tightened on his fork. "We don't need charity." Harlan smiled. "Avuncular. Not charity, investment." Indiscretion. David pushed the check back. Voice steel. "Our wedding's no footnote." They left with the fog rolling in, the check and signed on the linen, but the offer lingered like a bribe from the gods of conditional love. "He means well," James said in the car, but David shook his head. "Well's just well-disguised walls." That night, tangled in sheets, they made promises anew, no compromises, but the world conspired otherwise. Emily's podcast launched without them, Reclaimed Hearts, featuring survivors of straight-washed upbringings. Her pilot episode, a veiled nod to James, the jock who broke free, only to chain himself again. Listeners ate it up, downloads spiking, and suddenly Emily was everywhere. TEDx Talks, Out magazine profiles, positioning herself as the bridge from Heartland to Haven. James stumbled on it during a lunch break, earbuds in, her voice a siren call. Betrayal hurts, but forgiveness heals. Shout out to my ex, he knows who he is. Rage boiled, but beneath it, a treacherous whisper. What if she's right? What if I am chained? He confronted her at a Castro coffee shop, slamming his mug down. Using our pain for clicks? Classy. Emily blinked, feigning surprise. Your pain? Honey, I lived it too. That disownment? My family's no picnic. Her girlfriend nodded sympathetically from the corner. James leaned in, voice low thunder. Stay out of our story. But as he stormed out, Her laugh trailed. Too late, Jay. It's viral now. David found him later on their fire escape, staring at the city lights like a man adrift. Talk, he said simply, settling beside him with 2 IPAs. James spilled the podcast, the venom, the vertigo of seeing their private hell public. David listened, then pulled out his phone. A fresh sketch, digital now, of Emily as a marionette, strings leading to faceless suits. She's noise, he said. We're the signal. They clinked bottles, the city humming below. But James's heart raced with a new fear. Not doubt, but the dawning horror that their love, once intimate, was now a spectacle. And spectacles demand encores. The viral undercurrent swelled into a riptide, pulling their quiet life into the spotlight's glare. David's Exile series exploded overnight, thanks to Emily's inspo mentions, galleries clamoring, collectors bidding, a New York agent cold calling at 3 a.m. PST. Raw, revolutionary, she gushed over Zoom, her Park Avenue backdrop screaming old money. We could take you global. David hesitated, glancing at James nursing coffee across the kitchen table. It's our story, he said. Both of us. The agent paused. Then, include the husband. Americana angle, small-town sweethearts against the odds. Audiences eat that up. James's jaw clenched around his mug. Sweethearts? We're not a Hallmark special. But the offers piled features in The Advocate, a spot on a queer YouTube panel, even a pitch from a streaming service for a docuseries, from Dissonant to I Do. Temptation gnawed. Visibility meant validation. Funds for the center, a megaphone for the kids they mentored. Yet each yes felt like a chain, linking them to Emily's narrative, reducing their scars to clickbait. We're not props, David insisted during late-night debates, pacing their flat with a half-smoked joint. James pulled him down onto the rug, bodies aligning like puzzle pieces. Then we own it. Flip the script. Their counterpunch, a wedding. Not the elopement hush-hush, but a full-throated affair. Vows renewed in public. A declaration that love wasn't whisper quiet but roar loud. They planned it guerrilla style. Rooftop venue in Brooklyn, David's MoMA Connect hooked the spot. Invites via social blast to their tribe center volunteers. Art collective crew. Even Rico from therapy group. No A-listers. Just real ones. The trans teen James coached who'd come out to her folks because of him. The drag mama who'd sewn David's coming out flag. Budget scraped from David's Etsy surge and James's overtime. They aimed for intimate 50 guests. Fairy lights. A playlist blending Patsy Cline with Frank Ocean. Emily caught wind. Of course, her DMs a mix of congrats and shade. Cute redo. Need a +1? James blocked her, but the sabotage simmered. 2 weeks out, his old crew from the restoration gig called. Boss man's pulling your hours. Distraction, he says. Bible belt board upstairs. James laughed bitterly over speakerphone with David. Distraction from what? Loving my husband. The word husband still sent a thrill through him, but the sting landed. David squeezed his hand. Their loss. We'll crowdfund the cake. As invites flew digital, responses flooded. Yes laced with warnings. Proud. But watch the trolls from a Portland aunt. Nos from Boise holdouts. One cousin's praying you come to your senses. David's Uncle Harlan resurfaced, emailing a revised check for the event. Discreetly, of course. David forwarded it to spam, then drafted a public reply on Insta. Thanks, Uncle. We'll fund our joy our way. No strings love. The post went mini-viral, shares from queer icons. But so did the hate, DMs calling them attention whores, Satan's show ponies. One night, James scrolled too far, landing on a Boise forum thread. My brother's gone full homo. Wedding's a circus. Who's surprised? Posted by his sister. He hurled his phone across the room, screen cracking like his resolve. David found the shards in the morning, piecing them with James still asleep, face slack in the dawn light. He taped it clumsily, then crawled back into bed, tracing the furrow between James's brows. We can cancel, he whispered when James stirred. Go quiet again. James's eyes snapped open, fierce. Hell no. This is our stand. For every kid staring down a disownment notice, he kissed David's palm, then rose to brew coffee, the ritual grounding them. That day, they shopped vows at a queer stationery shop in the Haight, handmade cards etched with in spite of, because of, forever. Read this at the altar, David teased, slipping one into James's pocket. James peeked. You are my chosen country. His throat tightened. Damn. Poet. Rehearsal night brought the first real fracture. Rico and the therapy circle crashed their flat for a mock ceremony. Beers in hand, laughter echoing off exposed brick. But midway through toasts, Rico booming to loves that outlast lightning, James's phone buzzed. His mother, from the hospice now, stage 4 creeping silent. Come say goodbye. One last time. The room hushed as he read it aloud, voice fracturing. David knelt beside him. Go. We'll hold the date. But James shook his head, tears hot. Can't leave you to this circus alone. The group murmured support, but as they filed out, James turned to David. What if it's a trap? Lure me back. Talk sense into me? David pulled him close. Then you come back stronger. Our love's not fragile. James flew out at dawn, landing in Boise's chill autumn bite, the family home a husk of faded siding. His mother lay propped in the living room recliner, oxygen hissing soft, eyes milky but sharp. James, she breathed, hand frail in his. The visit blurred. Siblings hovering awkward. Emily absent but her shadow long. His sister muttering she warned us. His mother confessed in whispers, I was scared. Church said. But God sees hearts. No apology, just a locket pressed into his palm. His baby photo, tucked with a faded rainbow sticker, swiped from a parade years back. For your wedding, she said. Wish I could see it. James broke then, sobbing into her lap like the boy he'd been, the room thick with unsaid I forgive yous. He returned to San Francisco hollowed but healed, the locket a talisman around his neck. David greeted him at the gate with a sign. My prodigal. Home. Their wedding week dawned golden. Guests trickling in, flights from Portland, Amtrak from Seattle, turning their flat into a warren of air mattresses and inside jokes. The ceremony loomed, but so did the storm. Trolls doxed the rooftop address, forcing a last-minute switch to a community garden in Queens, secured by the agent's strings. Media's circling, she warned. Embrace it, or they'll write the ending. James and David exchanged looks over packing boxes. Our ending. The night before, they escaped to Coney Island, boardwalk empty under a harvest moon. Hand in hand, they rode the wonder will slow, the city a distant sparkle. Scared? David asked, head on James's shoulder. James nodded. Of the what-ifs. What if they win? What if love's not enough? David turned, eyes fierce in the gondola's sway. It is. Because it's us. They kissed as the wheel crested, the world falling away, and for a moment, doubt drowned in the salt breeze. Dawn broke on the garden, wildflowers rioting in raised beds, string lights twinkling like stars grounded. Guests milled, 50 strong, diverse as America itself. Black trans elders in dashikis, Latina lesbians with guitars, Asian twinks snapping Polaroids. Rico officiated in a sequined stole, voice booming over the harbor hum. David waited at the arch, in a linen suit tailored sharp, his sketchbook vows clutched like scripture. James approached slow, boots scuffed but sure, the locket glinting at his throat. Vows spilled. David's "you taught me home" is a verb, not a place. James's "I choose you," every storm. Rings slid on, simple bands, engraved defiant, and the kiss sealed it, cheers erupting like fireworks. But triumph's shadow loomed. Midway through the reception, tables groaning with vegan tacos and craft IPAs. A crash. Servers fleeing as paparazzi scaled the fence, flashes popping like gunfire. Emily, front and center, mic in hand from her live coverage crew. James, David, quick word on reclaiming love. Chaos reigned. Guests shielding the couple, a trans auntie hurling a pie at a lens. James lunged. Rage volcanic? Get out. But David held him back, voice calm amid the fray. Let 'em film. We'll steal the show. They danced then, slow and deliberate to At Last by Etta James. Bodies pressed defiant, the cameras whirring. Emily's face twisted, envy, not empathy, and she slunk away, her scoop soured. The footage hit like a meteor. Shaky clips of pie-flinging aunties, defiant dances, vows snatched midair by boom mics. Hashtags exploded, queer wedding crash, love defiant, turning their garden brawl into a viral manifesto. Outlets spun it gold. CNN, heroes of Heartland hold vows amid invasion. The New York Times, from dissonant to dance floor, America's queer resilience. Emily's angle crumbled, her Insta-live edited out, buried under user comments. Crashing a wedding? Peak villain era. She issued a teary apology reel, misunderstanding, supporting from afar. But the tide had turned, her activism exposed as grift. For David and James, the whirlwind was double-edged. Death threats pinged their inboxes. Fags deserve worse. But so did donations, thousands wired to the center. Notes reading "Your strength saved me." David's art skyrocketed. Exile's prints sold out. A Guggenheim Fellowship whispering in emails. James's story resonated too. Blue-collar queer icon. His photo with the trans basketball team plastered on union posters. Build bridges, not walls. They fielded invites, White House Pride reception. A spot on the Ellen Show reboot, but curated fiercely. Yes to grassroots panels. No to reality TV bait. Back home, the locket's weight pulled James eastward one last time. His mother's passing came quiet. A text from his sister. She went peaceful. Asked for you. He flew solo. David insisting go honor her your way. The funeral was a study in contrasts. Boise's stiff pews, mourners in pearls and polos murmuring tragic loss. His father's eulogy dodging the elephant. James's absence from the family photo. His lifestyle unspoken. Afterward, in the graveyard's hush, James knelt by the fresh earth, locket open in his palm. You saw me, he whispered to the wind. At the end, his sister approached tentative, eyes red. She kept your wedding pic. printed from the news. No embrace, but a nod, fissure, not fracture. David waited with takeout dim sum and a new sketch. James by a grave, not bowed but rising, roots twisting from the soil like veins of gold. Human, David said simply, as they ate cross-legged on the floor. Messy endings make room for beginnings. James traced the lines, throat tight. Like us, they made love slow after. Bodies a language of amends. The city lights winking approval through the blinds. Months blurred into a new normal. The flat traded for a brownstone in Harlem. Co-op garden where David planted wildflowers. James built raised beds sturdy as their vows. They mentored full-time now, David's workshops for queer youth. James's league expanding to after-school programs. Betrayals faded to footnotes. Emily's podcast tanked amid backlash. Her reinvention, a punchline at queer brunches. Harlan's check arrived yearly, and signed but symbolic. A uncle's quiet thaw. James's family trickled. A niece's birthday card. Uncle Jay. Tell David hi, cracks widening to canyons of possibility. One crisp October Eve, 2 years post-wedding, they hosted a block party. Grills smoking ribs and plantains, a DJ spinning Biggie into Billie Holiday. The crowd swelled. Neighbors, Ments, Rico with his new husband, a silver fox like himself. As dusk painted the sky bruise purple, David pulled James to the stoop, a velvet box in his pocket. Not rings, but keys. To the studio, he said, voice husky. Downtown. Your construction side hustle, queer-owned builds. James's eyes misted. He'd sketched plans for safe houses, tiny homes for runaways, dreaming big but doubting funds. How? David grinned, thief-like. Guggenheim grant. And a certain viral wedding. They toasted with mason jars of bourbon, the party pulsing around them like a heartbeat. A kid from the league tugged James's sleeve. Coach, show us that dance. And they obliged, swaying goofy under string lights, David's laugh bubbling free. No cameras this time, just Polaroids snapped by friends, developing slow in the autumn air. Later, tangled in hammock strung between brownstones, James murmured into David's hair. We proved it. David tilted up. I starlit. What? James smiled, vast as the skyline. Love triumphs. Against all goddamn odds. America, for all its fractures, red states rumbling bands, blue cities marching on, held space for their story. Not fairy tale, but flesh and blood testament. Disowned but not destroyed, betrayed but unbreakable. They stood as architects of their own arc, two men, hands clasped, building bridges where walls once loomed. And in the quiet hours, when doubts whispered faint, they'd trace each other's scars, remembering, love wasn't absence of storm, but dancing through it, defiant and alive. In the end, it was human, gloriously, messily so. David's final exile's piece hung in their hall. Two figures on a rooftop at sunset, backs to the horizon, not fleeing but facing, with a simple inscription, we chose each other. Below it, the locket rested on a shelf, open to that faded rainbow sticker, a relic redeemed. And every dawn, as coffee brewed and the city stirred, James would kiss David's temple, whispering morning, husband. David, sketching idly at the table, would reply morning, love. Simple words, profound as vows. In a land of odds stacked high, they tilted the table, their triumph.